My name is Adam Farquhar. I'm the Research and Data Officer with PeaceRep. With PeaceRep, which is the Peace and Conflict Resolution Evidence Platform at the University of Edinburgh. Today, I'm going to be talking about some insights that we gained from the overhaul of our database, and that's the Peace Agreement Database, or PACS, as we call it for short. I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute. And I'm sort of going to use as an entry point into this a mistake that we realized after we had overhauled this back end. And I think part of the inspiration behind that was I'm terrified of flying. I hate it, but I have to do it. And so obviously coming to the Philippines from Edinburgh required flying. So what I tend to do is I go online and do research and look up every single aspect of the aviation industry to sort of help make myself feel a little bit better. One of the things that I saw that was really cool was that one of the ways they train pilots, one of the reasons why this is such a safe industry, is one of the ways they train pilots, they have something called just culture, where pilots are encouraged to anonymously report every little mistake that's made when flying, no matter how big or small. And this has contributed to a culture of safety that we see now in the airline industry. So that's sort of going to be the entry point into my talk today. Now, I know if you're like me and came in last night, you're a bit jet lagged and tired. So talking about a database backend is not exactly exciting, but don't worry. It's not as boring as it sounds. We will talk about deep things like meaningful quotes, mistakes, deep questions about technology. Unfortunately, not about ice cream. I can't make that happen. But so yeah, just start with the mistake that was noticed. There we go. Well, we'll start with a quote. This is actually from a story that I read my daughter a couple years ago. It's from this book called Sophie's World. And every time I talk about data, I bring up this quote because I just think it has everything to do with what we talk about, particularly at this conference. And it just says, if an overgrown child draws something on a piece of paper, you can't ask the paper what the drawing is supposed to represent. And as we talk about data and meaning and everything AI, that's being sort of upscaled from the data that we work on, I think it's just something that I always remind myself of. So, starting with what went wrong. So, after we overhauled our database, we were contacted by someone who looked at one of our older agreements and said, look, I think I see a mistake here. This person was a signatory on an agreement as a mediator. In fact, they were the head mediator of this process. And from how things appeared on our front end, on our website, it looked like not only was this person not the head mediator, it was the person next to them. And this person was concerned about this because they were one of the first female head mediators of this process. And it kind of appeared by the way that we were presenting it on our database that it was another person who was a man. And obviously that could be problematic. So myself, working on the day-to-day of this database, went straight into the back end. Everything looked fine there, everything formatted correctly. It was when I went into the front end, the data was being rendered as this big block chunk of text. And so this is essentially what happened. On the back end, we had person one, head mediator, person two, mediator, and then the other individuals involved. Then on the front end, it looked like that. And so you could see why some people might misinterpret that to say the head mediator was actually person two. And obviously we were mortified and we immediately tried to rectify the issue. But I think this is sort of our entry point into saying, look, these things don't always go to plan. So just to say what we were trying to do, the Peace Agreement Database is this database that takes peace agreements from 1990 onwards, and we try to collect all the peace agreements and ceasefires from around the world. The issue that we were facing was that we needed to future-proof this database. We will, like a lot of people, will be coming to the end of some funding in 2026, and we're looking for ways that we can make this sustainable in the long run. And the way that we were going to do that was do something called automatic segmentation. And what that was essentially, in the past, what we would do is we would take a section of a peace agreement, we would copy it, we would paste it in the right place in the back end, and then that would become viewable in the front end. And once you do all these peace agreements line by line, this became a very lengthy process. And so what we intended to do, and I'll get back to that in a second, was to automatically segment the agreements line by line. So then we could tag each segment. And what that would allow us to do is to better understand the textual data that we're working with, and also hopefully be able to semi-automate the process of coding these agreements into the different categories that we code them into. So what I was going to say was that what this kind of shows, and these are sort of the questions that we're looking at today in the conference, was particularly the second one: what actors can influence technology design and how? And I think this is an example of, on one end, we had us, the people making the database, influencing the conflict design, and then we saw someone who was actually, this data actually represent, contact us, show us a mistake, and influencing the design that way. And I think this sort of discursive process back and forth is a big way of designing these databases. So yeah, this is just what I was talking about before, about why we were segmenting the back end. Just go to the next one. And so when I first started this, being involved with this project, I thought I was involved in a very technical data project. What I found out very quickly was that this was actually a people project. I was primarily working with people, and you'll see the sort of different types of people it takes to run this database. We have in-country experts, we have database expertise, software development. We have human translation as well. We make a very conscious decision to translate these peace agreements into English with human translators. So yeah, this is kind of a big point about these sort of things, that this is a human process. So going back to the initial mistake. So these sort of design choices or mistakes can really affect how people's stories are told, as I think they discussed in the previous session as well. And the thing to understand is these things will happen. No matter how much planning, no matter how good of a process you have, there will be mistakes that happen in your design process. And the important thing to remember when doing these processes is, look, that's, you know, if anyone has ever worked with a university and had to do ethical approval, they often say that working, going into a country and working with people is a more ethically fraught, but I think those days are over. I think digital-based research is just as, if not more, ethically fraught than doing person-to-person research, because just at the scale at which people are using this data. So I think, just to finish, because I have 1 minute left, but just to finish to say, I think the more that we work together, not just with the people building the data set, but for the people for which the data set is meant to represent, it'll help us improve these databases, and really we'll make these mistakes together and learn from them. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Adam. A round of applause. All right.